Thanks a lot, Howie. That's the kind of introduction put Earl Butts where he is today. I understand Earl's doing a tour of all the colleges speaking on ethnic humor. Gee, this is nice to be here. I'm so tickled. I dreamt about this about 4 or 5 years ago, about getting up here. I thought I was going to open like this. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, how would you feel if you were standing right here, right now, realizing that deep in the heart of every member of the audience, they figured they ought to be up here instead of you? How would you feel? Well, I feel great. It's wonderful to be here. This is a wild group, though. Did you go to the party last night? Oh, geez. I mean, the party started down here, but after a while they got into these hospitality rooms and into the sauce and things, and it was terrible, I'm telling you. They started a party right in the room next to mine, and it finished out in the hall. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, went out in the hall. Here's 2 guys draped on the floor there, their arm around each other. And the one guy says to the other, he says, "Hey, Charlie," he says, "does your tongue burn when you drink?" And he says, "I don't know, I never got drunk enough to light it." Wild people here at the party. At the party last night, I heard the one guy, he says, "Hey, Charlie, I see you brought your wife." And he says, "Big deal, twice the expense and half the fun." It wasn't bad. The other guy says, "I see you brought your wife." And he says, "Hell, I'd rather bring her than kiss her goodbye." I'm glad you sat right up front. I'll tell you, brother. I'm going to do a little research here, if I can. Just raise your hands. How many of you are engaged in the business of selling? Would you raise your hands, please? Okay, and how many of you are in the business of selling Canada or the United States? Raise your hands, will you? Okay, what country are you other people selling here? I talk to sales audiences and management groups and everything, and I found out that every single one of them that's successful, the most successful people I've ever met, are in the business of selling themselves and their ideas and what they believe in. And the thrill I get here is I came in that room today and I said to myself, somebody in that audience needs me. And I'm going to touch one life today. That's my goal, is I'm going to touch one life today. And that's the goal I have. Every time I get up in front of an audience, I say, there's one guy that's ready out there. Because that happened to me. I was in an audience. Herb True came to speak at Grand Trunk, and I was a loser, and things weren't going right. And Herb came in there and blew my mind, just blew me right out of the sack. And he changed my whole life. And fortunately, the way it turned out, eventually I changed Herb's life and saved him from some problems. And when you think of the obligation you have when you stand in front of an audience, it's kind of scary, but it's terrific. I had the opportunity to speak recently in New York City to a group of railroad presidents, and when I got done early, about noon, I ran across the street, the Waldorf Astoria, and there was Bill Gove, America's greatest salesman, speaking. You know Bill? Speaking in the grand ballroom. And I went in there, and Bill grabbed me by the arm, and he says, "Come on with me, Art. You're going into the special room in the back there. They got a cash bar, but we're going to the free bar here with the high rollers." And he took me up to a guy. He says, "I want you to meet Charlie Johnson here, Charlie Johnson, #1 guy, Xerox Corporation. Meet Art Fettig, heck of a speaker. You ought to have him on your program here someday." And took me over to another guy. "I want you to meet Leonard Woodcock. Leonard here is the #1 guy. UAW, top guy. You ought to meet Art Fettig. This guy really do a terrific job. You got to have him on your program. He'll kill that." And what he was doing, he was selling the other guy to me, and he was selling me to the other guy. Sort of a mutual exchange there, back and forth. I thought, this is terrific. I'm going to take it back to the office. I went right back to the office. The next day, John Burdican, president of the Grand Trunk where I work, came in the office. I said, "Now's my chance. Mr. Burdican, I want you to meet Louie here. Louie is our new flunky clerk." And Louie went back and screwed up all my audit. No, I said, "I want you to meet Louie. Louie's a new member of our team. We're expecting great things from Louie." And Louie went back and he said, "Gosh, I got to come up with something because the president's expecting it. Try it when you introduce each other." Could I ask you one question here? I asked a lot of questions to give you a little body movement here, but How many of you are sitting next to people that you are in a club with or closely related to? How many of you are sitting next to people? Not your own wife or something, but other people. Okay, take a look around you. Get your hands way up, will you? And take a look around you. And it's a big, big clump. And what I brought that up for is there's a fellow named Ken Lewis with General Motors Corporation, and Ken does a talk called OPE, Other People's Experience. And he said life is too tough and experience is just too darn costly to get it firsthand. And so the way to really get experience is from other people, drawing from their experiences. And whenever Herb True and I go to a convention or anything, we always shake hands. He taught me this. He says, Art, I love you, and we get to mingle all the time, but there's some tremendous brain power in this room right here, and I want to get me some. I want to go around and talk to these different people and get to meet them, and I find out your area expertise, write it down on the back of your card. I get back home, and I started doing this, and I've got a collection of the greatest brain power in the world right now. And I call the guys up if I have a problem. George Morrissey, if I got a management by objective problem, I call George up. Call Cavett up. Hey, Cavett, you know, what do? I can't, I need a new jester, Cavett. Where can I get a new jester? Anything I need. And you can do this very trick. But the thing is, try to meet somebody you haven't met. Would you all take just 1 second, turn around, shake hands with somebody you don't know. If you have to reach way over, go ahead and do it. Give them your name, okay? Enough. You can do that later on some more. Okay. Try doing that all day now. Wherever you go, don't go to the people you know. I'm not going to learn a heck of a lot from you, Charlie, because we live together and we do it all the time, but let's find out what the other clubs are doing. Let's get that guy in the corner who signed up. How many was it? 30, 40 new Toastmasters? What was that award yesterday? 100? Oh, okay. I signed up one yesterday. I had to get one so I could say I'm a recruiter. We got one, the president of the local bank, I signed up for Toastmasters, and so I feel like I did some good before I came down here. Didn't do much before that. There's one top speaker in this room right now. There is one top speaker, and there is one worst speaker in this room. Would the top speaker in the room right now please raise their hand? Jeez. And would the worst? My gosh, that's a weird reaction. Everybody else is somewhere in between, and you can learn up and down both ways. There's a tremendous amount to be learned right there. I told my daughter Nancy, I said, Nancy, I'm coming to one of the shots I dreamt about many years ago when I first joined Toastmasters. I'm going to the International and be with all the winners. I said, these people in my book who get this involved with Toastmasters, they're winners. And you're going to have some more winners tomorrow. One person's going to walk out of there with a trophy, but that's nice to take a trophy home, but anybody that participates is a winner in my book because you got into the arena. That's where it's at. I said, Nancy, for contrast, you go to Western Michigan University, and they got wild kids. These young kids are terrific nowadays, a sense of humor they got. I said, I'll give $10 the kid comes up with the best loser joke. You go to the college, get the kids together, and the stuff they come up with. A loser is a guy that gets a kidney transplant from a bedwetter. These kids. Oh, my gosh. A loser is a district governor who plays hide and seek and nobody looks for him. A loser is a piano player in the marching band. That's the music department. Same department. A loser is a girl accordion player in a topless orchestra. That's a pinch of it. A loser is a guy who thinks he's marrying Virginia Dare, and he gets her sister frigid. A loser is a girl who goes in to the doctor's office to get a silicone shot and sits on the needle. And here's the one we paid the $10 for. A loser is a gal who puts her bra on backwards and it fits. I told that to Bill Gove, and he says, and the winner is the guy who gets to dance with her. That's terrible. How many of you can remember back in school, in college, grade school, any time at all, one teacher that touched your life? One teacher said, Sam, you got a special talent, and you're going to really make it work. How many of you? Get them way up there. Take a look around, would you? Lots of times I'll speak to management clubs this size, and I might have one hand up. But you people are doing things. That's why there's lots of hands. With me, it was Father Skiffington. I went to the University of Detroit High School, and I was a staff poet at the University of Detroit High School, and my teacher, my English teacher, was Father Skiffington. He was a tough Jesuit priest, wore a black cassock with chalk all over it, and some people said Father Skiffington was mean. I don't think he was mean. When we graduated, he threw a free beer party and then bolted the bathroom door. That ain't mean. That's just conservative, I figured. But Father Skiffington used to read my poetry. I was a staff poet for the Cub newspaper. In fact, I was the last staff poet they ever had. It just worked out that way. And one day, Father Skiffington called me aside, and he said, Art, he said, I believe that God had a great plan when he created this world. But he said, I think he had a greater plan, a continuing plan, as he created each and every individual. And he said, I believe that God gave every one of us and every one of you a talent, a special talent. And if you can discover this talent, and if you can polish this talent, and if you can learn to put this talent to work for the good of all mankind, he said, Art, this can be a world full of love and peace and understanding. And he said, Art, I believe that the good Lord put you here to serve as a bad example. And I said, yeah, but Father, you got to admit I'm doing a great job of it. And basically that's my message. As I travel all over the country and get to run into Canada once in a while, I stand in front of an audience and I serve as a bad example. I started out teaching creative writing to students, and they would take a look at my writing and they say, you mean you got $30 for that? Think what I'm going to do with my stuff. And they saw my book when it came out, and they said, you mean you made thousands on that? Think what I'm going to do. And right now in my bookcase, I got 12 books from people that sat in that audience and went out and proved it, that they could do a better job. And every time I give a speech, everywhere I go, all over the country, people, they watch me work, and they say, sometimes, Art, you mean you get $10 for that? Or $1,000 an hour sometimes. Think what I'm going to get. And right now there are 3 professional speakers that I know of out on the circuit, just because they sat in the audience and they said, hey, I can do a better job than you're doing. They're not doing it. But they're working steady, and they're getting better and better and polishing, and that's what it takes, is you just have to sit down and make a determination and say, I got a talent, and I'm going to use that talent. In the writing field, people say, how do you sell your writing? And it's simple. You take a plain sheet of paper, you run it through the typewriter, put your name at the top, whatever title you want, put a lot of margin around so editors love to scratch around and write things in the margin and everything, and you send it off, you fold it up, put it in a legal size envelope, send it off, and always include a self-addressed stamped envelope so they can mail you a check. And that's what I did with this poem. It's called Pay Attention, Brother. Do you ever get that winded feeling, ever find your head a-reeling and keeping up with the Joneses down the street? Now, I want you to pay attention to me. Do you ever get the feeling gloomy just because they seem a little more elite? Well, then, brother, if you're like me, you'd like to find a place to flee, a place where you don't have to be keeping up, a place where people smile a lot and are quite content with what they got, grateful they got coffee to fill their cup. To appreciate what you got, brother, that's a secret, ain't no other. Just thank God you got something nice. Don't start thinking it's disaster. You see that other guy moving faster. Count your blessings, brother. That's darn good advice. Thing goes on like that, 26 lines. And so what I did is I just typed it up and folded it up, sent it. I forgot to tell you, sometimes they don't send you a check. They send you what they call a rejection slip. And I sent that poem out to an editor, and sure enough, I got a rejection slip. I said, he probably had a fight with his wife on the way to work, and he just passed my masterpiece up. So I sent it out to another editor, and I got another rejection slip, and I'm no quitter, so I sent it out again, and it came back. And I sent it out again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And the 16th time I sent that poem out, I got a beautiful letter from Modern Maturity magazine. And the editor, she wrote, and she said, Art, we love your poem, and we want to use it, but we don't pay anything. And I says, I don't care, just publish it and send me a copy, and I'll hang it on the wall, and I'll be so proud. And I waited, and I waited. I waited 16 months, and I never heard from that lady, and I got mad. So I wrote her a letter. I said, listen, I don't mind giving you my stuff, but for Pete's sake, either use it or send it back. And that was the wrong thing to say to that lady, because she sent it back. And I sent it out again and again, and the 26th time I sent the poem out, I got a wonderful letter from Ligorian with a check. And Ligorian magazine, they went first class. They published the poem right in the center of the magazine where the staple is. Some of you guys know where the staple is in the magazines. My son Daniel was 16 before he figured out girls didn't have staples in their navels. And never tell me how he figured it out. That's kind of what happens when you take your talent and you polish your talent and you go to share that talent with the good of all mankind. You go, boom. Because the talent field is kind of crowded. Isn't that right? You say, hey, I'm going to give you the greatest speech in the world, and I'm going to touch your soul. And they say, we haven't got any room on the program, Charlie, because Nancy's going to come in here and talk on cake decorating or something like that. And it kind of hurts. And I thought, well, this is just the writing business I'm having trouble with. Then I found out something different, that life is like that, that successful people are people that get up off the floor. The other day I heard a girl in Phoenix. She's a president of the Cable Car Toastmasters Club in San Francisco. Wonderful girl. And she said this. She said, the only difference between winners and losers is luck. Ask any loser, he'll tell you. But half the salesmen in America take this talent or take this product or take anything they want to sell, and they make one call and they say, I told you, you don't want it, forget it. And they quit. And they never sell anything. It's 18% make 2 calls, 7% 3 calls, 5% make 4 calls. 20% of the salespeople in the world make 5 or more calls, same idea, same client, back and forth, same thing. They sell 80% of the business. It's a story of rejection. And this speaking business, I get heard all the time. I get turned down for speeches more than ever. I have most of my writing rejected 10 times before I sell it. I'm flying so high right now. This week I sold my book, Selling Lucky, to Frederick Fell Corporation, who in my book is the top sales company, top publisher in the country in this field. And I tried to sell it to him. I sent it to him, and he rejected it. He said, I don't think we can move 5,000 fast enough to justify it. We got a great book, but, like that. So I spent $5,000 of my own money, published the book, sent the guy the copy. He says, why didn't you show me this before you printed it? We want it. We'll buy all the copies you got, distribute them. We're going to go at another 15,000 right away. And I said, let me read you your letter, turkey. And I read him. I read him the letter, and he said, well, I missed the boat. I'm wrong 90% of the time, and I just have to be right 10% of the time, and I'm successful. And he said, send me the book, let's go ahead with it. And God, I'm so thrilled. I've been at it since '61 to get me a hardcover book with great national distribution and all that. And this is my week. Two ways this is my week, because I think this is the most challenging speaking assignment on the American platform, and God, I'm glad to be here with you. There's a fellow named Vanderbilt. He was one of the famous railroad tycoons. He had a sign on his wall that said, the public be damned. Some of the railroads are still operating under that philosophy, but We don't at Grand Trunk. We love people at Grand Trunk Railroad. But there was a fellow named George Westinghouse. One time he went into Vanderbilt's office. He said, I got a great idea. We're going to stop boxcars using air. And Vanderbilt says, what have you been smoking, George? Get out of my office. I haven't got time for such foolishness. Get out. And he started his own company, air brake company, made himself several $1 million. And one day Vanderbilt had a visitor, and he said, boy, did you miss the boat with George Westinghouse? He came in here with that great idea. You threw him out of the office? He says, yeah. He said, but I used my regular method of handling ideas. I turn down every single idea I hear the first time. And I figure if the idea or the man is worth a darn, it's going to come back again and again. And I think about recruiting for Toastmasters, and the guy I signed up yesterday, the president of the bank, that was the 5th time I asked him. Make sense? Huh? How many times have you asked people and you said, I asked that turkey once and he turned me down. Try it 5 times and then you'll really get the feel of it. How many of you have children? We got 4 children. How many you got? Who's got more than 4? How many? 6? How many? Any more than 6? How many?
You made it home.
No, I don't care about your personal life. How many you got? Who's got 6? 2 of you? 3 of you? Nobody's got 7? 4 of you? 8. There. Come up, brother. You saved my soul. I want you to have a free copy of my book. Come on. Holy Joe, I thought I was going to have to give away 4 books. Will you pass that back to him? Thank you very much. You Catholic, are you? just one of those Protestants, give it everything you got, eh? How many of you have kids that played on a team, any kind of organized sports? Okay, and hold your hands, keep them up there if your kids ever sat on the bench. How many of you ever had kids sat on the bench? Isn't that a feeling? Man, you go to the game, and this is it, and nothing happens. Well, in my first book, I wrote about all the things that frustrated me. I found I got my best humor. Whenever I got a real intense gut feeling, really mad about something, if I could just hang on to it, take it home, dump it on a typewriter, I'd usually come out with a good article that sold. And when my son Daniel was in the 6th grade, he came home from school and he said, hey, Dad, they picked the basketball team today and I'm on it. Tonight we got our first game and I want you to come and watch us play. And I thought, boy, this is it. Boy, the birth of a superstar, The world's going to see my son in action. And I went to the game, and the first quarter, Daniel sat on the bench. I figured, boy, that other team must be terrified knowing they're holding this kid in reserve. And the second quarter, Daniel sat on the bench, and I said, boy, this is going to be a big second half coming up. And the game ended, and Daniel never got to play. And boy, I wanted to kill that coach. I mean, they had 17 points, and they never put him in. I wanted to kill him, and I held it back. I said, no, hold on to it, Art. You can use this. So I went home and wrote a humor article about it, sent it off to an editor. He sent me $100. Well, I didn't feel too bad about Daniel not playing then, but what they did is when they published it, another editor wrote me, and he said, Art, I saw your article, and we want to run it in our magazine, and he sent me $100. Another guy grabbed it, sent me another $100. Well, by then I was glad the kid didn't play, But when a kid is in the 6th grade, he doesn't care what you write about him. He's too busy growing. They don't pay any attention. But now I put all my best humor together in my first book, and it was about to be published. They sent me the proof sheets, but it was too late to change anything. They said, here they are, so you'll know what it looks like. And I see this chapter on Daniel. I just threw the book together, the stuff I like. Now Daniel's 6'2", a senior in high school, and kids get hurt easy when they're that. They're sensitive when they're seniors in high school. And so I'm torn between two feelings. I got enough gas to open the station out, and excuse me, but I'm torn between 2 different fronts. I'm so thrilled to get my first book published, and I don't want to hurt my son. So the book is just about 2 weeks from hitting the press, and Daniel comes home and he says, hey, Dad, they picked the varsity today, and I'm on it. I figured, boy, I'm off the hook. So I went to the first game, and the first quarter, Daniel sat on the bench. And the second quarter, Daniel sat on the bench. And the third quarter, Daniel sat. Now, you fathers get this. 4 minutes, got it? 4 minutes into the last quarter, they put Daniel in. And in 4 minutes less than a quarter, he scored 7 points. Now, any dad can tell you, if a kid can score 7 points in 4 minutes less than a quarter, if he'd have been in the whole game, he'd have gone 50, 60 points. Ain't that right? Darn right he would. Tell you, I was so thrilled. There is nothing in the world like watching your kid dunk the ball and the crowd cheers. There's just no feeling like that in the world. And I got that intense gut feeling. I said, I got to try to capture this on paper. So I went to the next game with my pen in hand, and I wrote this verse. It's called Impartiality. That's my son out there, the one with the hair. Did you see him snuff that guy out and all? Hey, ref, that foul was a rotten call. That's him, Dan the man. Ain't he great? 4 fouls, and it's only 8:15. Yeah, that's him, number 4222. Now, he might not look like much to you, but I'm darn proud to tell you that's my son out there. Ain't no feeling. There's no feeling in the whole world like watching your kid dunk the ball and the crowd cheers. And any of you people didn't raise your hand that you got kids. I want you to go home tonight. It's worth it just to watch the kid dunk the ball and the crowd cheers. Honest. One of the chapters in my first book was about naming our children. Ruthie and I, Ruthie is my wife's name, and we had a fight about what to name our girl. And we got one of these books from the library, you know, that has all the names and the nationalities and what they mean. We went through this book, and we had a different argument on every single name. We got all the way to the name Zelda. And I said, we can't call her Zelda. I knew a girl in school named Zelda Zweiback, Z-W-I-A-B-A-C. And unfortunately, Zelda went to one of those parochial schools where the kids went to the bathroom in alphabetical order. And by the time Zelda was in the 4th grade, her kidneys conked out on her. That wasn't true. We named our kids like a lot of you did, after songs. That used to be the thing. And when our first daughter came along, she had a smile and laugh and face, and Frank Sinatra was singing a song to his wife back then. If you don't see her each day, you miss her. Sorry for you, she has no sister. No angel could replace my Nancy with the laughing face. And Nancy grew up, and she was in the Miss America pageant in Battle Creek, and she didn't win. But the girls got together, and they voted our Nancy Miss Congeniality. And I did some research since then, and I've discovered that congeniality is congenital. She got it from her mother. I told you about Danny, my favorite song, "Oh Danny Boy, the pipes are calling." And I'm on a tight schedule because I'm hosting a party tonight in Pontiac, Michigan. Proud papa. Daniel's getting married tomorrow. Isn't that beautiful? Next one came along. I forgot to tell you, Ruthie and I have this RH blood factor problem. Ruthie is negative about everything. Even her blood is negative, and I'm positive. And so when our third child was born, she was what you call an RH baby, and that means she had a yellow jaundice condition in her blood, and it's a condition that keeps getting worse. And so the doctors had to take her and drain the blood right away and do a complete blood change on her. And right after they did the blood change, the chaplain came in, and he said, "Art and Ruth, I just talked to the doctors, and the yellow jaundice titer is climbing rapidly, and if they don't do a blood change, it can cause permanent brain damage. And so they're going to have to try another blood change, and it does not look good. We think you should baptize your baby right now. And you have to come up with a name." And the night before, we'd seen a great Ray Bolger show, and he sang, "Once in love with Amy, always in love with Amy." And we loved our little girl very much, and we baptized her and we called her Amy. And right after that, the doctors did a complete blood change. And Children's Hospital in Detroit, these doctors were from. And they stayed there another 6 hours, and the thing climbed and climbed. And the titer got worse and worse. And they did another blood change, and the titer climbed. And 23 hours later, they did another blood change, and thank God I can tell you that today Amy's one of the healthiest cheerleaders they got at Kellogg Community College. Just because those doctors, thank you, ma'am, just because those doctors hung in there and gave it a full shot, and those doctors loved the kind of work they were doing because they kept closing and helping our little girl. Next one came along, we called him Hutsut Ralston on the Rillerock. We call him David for short, and that kid is for sale. Honestly, in the game of school, David does not play with a full deck. He came home from school the other day. He says, "Here's my report card, and I'm sick of watching television anyway." David's what we call a light eater. It gets light, and he starts eating. But let me tell you about David. I was in the den the other day reading some other guy's book and writing down some original speech material, and I get kicked on the foot. Now David is 6'3.5" tall, and he's got a real foot on him, and when he kicks you, you know it. He kicked me on the foot and he said, "Get up, Dad." And I look, and there in front of the TV set is David, 6'3.5", standing there with his hand on his heart. And what happened when our kids were like this, they were like a ladder, 1, 2, 3, 4, because Ruthie and I, we had 4 children and 2 miscarriages the first 6 years we were married. And we finally figured out what was causing it. Ruthie is hard of hearing. No kidding, that was it. We go to bed and I say, "Honey, you want to go to sleep or what?" And she'd say, "What?" We finally got us a hearing aid approved by the church, and everything was fine after that. One day, the kids were in the den, 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, and the television was on, and I said to myself, "We don't have any real traditions in our family. I'm going to start me one." I said, "Kids," I said, "everybody up, there's a ball game going on." I said, "That's a Star-Spangled Banner they're playing on the television. From now on in this house, whenever they play that, everybody up, put your hand on your heart and just stand in front of the television." And you think that doesn't feel good now when I'm sitting in the den and not reading or something, and 6'3.5" David kicks me on the foot and says, "Get up, Dad." Kids don't do what you tell them to do. They do what they see you doing. And if you don't like the way your kids are growing up, you got to take a good look at yourself, and by golly, that's terrifying sometimes, isn't it? It's terrifying. How many of you own tape recorders? How many of you have them in your car? Who doesn't own a tape recorder here? You don't own one. I want you to have a free copy, a free cassette of mine here. Somebody said giving a guy a free cassette that doesn't own a tape recorder is like giving a eunuch a free weekend with a happy hooker. And I don't believe it. That isn't nice. I would never say that. But I got a friend named Max Stark who's a realtor. Many of the things I tell you about here are chapters in my book now. And my book is put together of vignettes, basically, stories that I tell on the platform. The thing about the poem Rejection, that poem and that is in there. This one I'm doing right now on tape recorders is in there. And you say, where do you get material? Where do you learn to put material together for a speech? Initially, you steal it. That's where I got my material to start. And then I started writing more and more and changing and adapting, and eventually you get so much material you got to beat it with a club. I could go for 8 hours right now. I have to club it to death. It keeps creeping up on me, the material. That's where I'm at right now. But this chapter on Max Stark is a true story. Max was a pastry man in Germany, and he studied all over Europe to become one of the best pastry men in the world, moved to Chicago, And within 2 years, he was a vice president of the largest bakery in Chicago. And he looked around, he said, hey, I don't want to raise my kids in Chicago. I want a small town. So he moved to Battle Creek, and he had a pastry job there. And he could bake all the pastry you could eat in Battle Creek in 2 hours. So he had all his time left over. And he tried his hand at the insurance business, 3 or 4 months, didn't get anywhere. And then one day he called me up and said, Art, I'm going into the real estate business. What can you do to make me successful? And I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. You buy a tape recorder, I'll loan you some tapes. And I gave him Earl Nightingale's Lead the Field, which is advertised in your Toastmasters magazine. And the other one was Cabot Roberts' course on real estate. And I said, listen to these tapes 15 minutes every day of your life from now on. And Max started to listen to the tapes and doing stupid things. He's knocking on people's doors cold and saying, hey, I got somebody who wants to move into this neighborhood. If you want to sell your house, I think I could sell it for you. And then he had to go out of town because we didn't have any. Dumb guy, he went out and got some of these stupid flags and a sign said open house. And first year, Max sold $1,200,000 worth of real estate. He hung in there. Second year, he sold $2 million worth of real estate. Max has got the biggest house on the lake, just bought a 200 horsepower boat, water skiing and all that. And one day I went up to Max, I was doing an article for a magazine, I said, Max, what's the secret to your success? You're the most successful realtor I've ever met. What's the key to it? And he says, those lousy tapes, Art. He says, those stupid I listen to those tapes 15 minutes every day of my life. And he says, funny thing about tapes, they never change. They couldn't have changed, but they're different every time I go back to them. Because I keep changing, and I keep growing, and my field of experience keeps growing. And every time I go back to them, I get something else that helps me to become more successful. Well, Max's story is, in a way, my story. I've got 5 clients who are PhDs that I write for. I do some speech writing for some clients. I have 5 other clients who are either vice presidents, executive vice presidents, presidents, or chairman of the board of corporations doing over $150 million each. I get to talk at the colleges. The other day they gave people a credit, 1 credit hour, just for sitting and listening to me 8 hours. And it was fantastic because I don't have 1 credit hour to my name. I have never got a credit hour in college. High school is as far as I ever got to. And everything I learned on a tape recorder. I got tape recorders in the bathroom, in the kitchen, in my car, in my office. And I've got the greatest teachers in the world. I got Peter Drucker when I want to know about something. Got Maxwell Maltz pounding direct into my brain, talking himself, his live voice, and Earl Nightingale and all these great people. And I read a book, and maybe if I'm lucky, I get 15%. Once I learned about tapes and repetition, I started to really get an education. Because the first time you listen to a tape, you get a certain level of knowledge. You learn a little bit. The second time, you take that little bit you learned with you to approach it the second time, and you can build on that and build on it. By the 4th time, it starts to go into my memory bank. 5th time, it's mine. I got it. Once a month, I go back to it, review it, and it stays up here. The greatest breakthrough in the field of education today is tapes. And if Cabot and I look like we're pushing kind of hard to get you to buy a tape recorder and use a tape recorder, it's because we feel it deep in our guts. Deep. Changed my whole life. Whatever success I am today, it's because of that little old tape recorder and a wife that'll put up for it. Mostly the wife. Hope I sold you on that. I want to tell you about 9 important words that changed my career. I started out as a national speaker at World Meeting Planners Congress, speaking all over the country, and one day I discovered that I could get to Lansing, Michigan faster than I could get to Palm Springs, California. One of those flashes like that, you know. And I was one of the best kept secrets in the state of Michigan. Nobody ever heard of me, but I was getting a pretty good national reputation. So I said, I'm going to start getting more speeches in Michigan, and I can work more, work a full-time job and go out and do a banquet or seminar or anything. So I started to do a speech. Every time I did a speech, I used these 9 magic words, and they doubled my income. Here they are, 9 magic words. I got a problem, and I need your help. Every time I give a speech, I go up to the program chairman, I got a problem, I need your help. I'm one of the best kept secrets in Michigan, and I want to book more speeches. So if I didn't screw it up too bad for you, if I didn't mess up too bad, will you pass 3 of my brochures on to some other program chairman who you know who hires professional speakers? Now, I average 1 speech a week, at least now, in the state of Michigan at a professional fee. And if I got a credit to anything, it's those 9 magic words. I've got a problem. Somehow they're the key to the love instinct in people. People are flattered when you share your problem with them. I took it to the office, and I have a lot of vice presidents I have to deal with, and sometimes they don't answer my letters. I started using that technique. I got a problem, and I need your help. And the next morning, I always get a phone call from the top man saying, I'm on your side, Art. Let's do it together. I don't understand him. Another technique I learned from Don Dybel and Dr. Jordan. We went out to lunch together, and Don Dybel's the author of The Pure Joy of Making Money. That ain't a bad idea. And what he did is, this Dr. Jordan, whenever Don stopped talking, he would simply repeat 1 or 2 words of whatever Don said when he stopped. Then Don would open up some more and take him further and further and further, telling him all kinds of things he really didn't want to tell him. You simply repeat the last few words. Daniel comes home from school. He says, hey, Dad, I want to use the car tonight. You say, car tonight? He says, yeah, we're going bowling. My turn to drive. Your turn to drive? You can keep a kid talking all night that way, but the key is they start to telling you what's really in their hearts. And if you're selling, they tell you the real objections, the real reason they're not doing what you want them to do. Then you can get them to start doing it. Try it. I want you men to try it, because you learn these techniques and you don't use them. Why don't you try it tonight with your wife? Whatever your wife says, just repeat the last few words, okay? For instance, a headache. I saw a joke the other day. You got that problem too, eh, brother? I saw a joke the other day, and it showed a King Kong carrying off this guy's wife under her arm, and the guy's yelling, tell him you got a headache! I was going through my material, and I said, what can I use? What material can I pull from my files? I have about 25 hours of material worked up now. What can I use that really fits Toastmasters? And this last June, I had the honor of having breakfast with Jess Kenner, who in my book is the finest poet in America today. And we had breakfast at Phoenix, and at National Speakers Association. Jess was there. And I said, Jess, I've been using your poem on the platform, trying to learn it. Is it okay? And he said, feel free to use it. I just get such a thrill to think that people are sharing my ideas. It's called Which Am I? You've probably heard Cabot do it. I hope I can remember it. I watched him tearing a building down, a gang of men in a busy town. With a ho-heave-ho and a hearty yell, they swung a beam, and a sidewall fell. I asked the foreman, are these men skilled, the kind you'd hire if you had to build? He gave a laugh and said, no, indeed. Why, common labor is all I need. I can easily wreck in a day or two what it takes a builder a year to do. And I asked myself, I asked myself as I went away. I asked myself, what are you thinking right now, huh? What are you thinking? You're thinking, hey, the old whiz kid screwed it up. Is that what you're thinking? Or are you thinking, oh, gosh, I'm glad I'm not up there making a jackass out of myself? Or are you thinking what I think you're thinking? I did a sales meeting over in Columbus, Ohio, not too long ago, and when I did that, I always mess that poem up like that. It's part of the way I do it, and I always look out on the audience when I do that, and I feel vibrations. And when I finished my talk, the sales manager was sitting right there, and I said, hey, is that guy there one of your top 10 salesmen? He says, how did you know? I said, I felt it across the hall. And that one right there? Yeah, and that guy with the brown suit, yeah, and the one back there, and that lady, and there, and there, and there, and right there. I picked 7 out of 7 of his top 10 salesmen. He said, how did you do it? You got to know these guys. How did you do it? And I said, I felt that love coming across the room at me. I felt them saying, oh, gosh, Art, I wish I knew the next line. I wish I could get you rolling again. Because, baby, I have been there, and I have died, and I'm right there. And that's something you call empathy. And to me, empathy is the key to greatness in any field you want. Management, sales, speaking, anything else. If you want to be a great Toastmaster, stand here in the other guy's shoes. Suffer with that audience like they do. Have to put up with you. They're giving you the greatest investment in the world, their time, and what are you giving them back? Huh? Dying there. In any case, any one of you thinks I don't know Jess's beautiful poem. We're going to try it one more time. And I asked the foreman, are these men skilled, the kind you'd hire if you had to build? He gave a laugh and said, no, indeed. Why, common labor is all I need. I can easily wreck in a day or two. But it takes a builder a year to do. And I asked myself as I went away, which of these roles do I choose to play? Am I a builder who works with care, measuring life with the rule and square? Am I shaping each deed with a well-made plan, patiently doing the best I can? Or am I a wrecker who walks the town, content with the labor of tearing down? And I always ask the audience, which are you? You a builder? You a wrecker? Huh? You the kind of guy that says, oh, that peanut-pushing Carter, yo-yo we got down there, why, he doesn't understand anything? Or are you saying, Jimmy, I know you don't know it all, but I believe you're trying, and I believe you're a loving Christian gentleman, and I'm going to try to help you. Anyway, you call me Jimmy, I'm with you, because you're our president. Or Mr. Trudeau, I might not speak French, but you're it with us, and you got my support. Or are you the kind of guy that says that stupid PTA, well, those yo-yos down at the PTA, one of these days I'm going to go to one of their meetings and tell them? Or are you the guy that says, yeah, I don't like to be there every Tuesday night and put in all that time, and I got other things to do, but I want my kids to have a great education. I think this is a room full of builders. I think this is a builders organization. I quit Toastmasters after 12 months. And I went to an alumni meeting, and the guy said, hey, Art, why don't you come back to Toastmasters? And I said, frankly, I don't think I can get anything out of it. And he said, you missed the whole point of Toastmasters. He says, you got. It's time you gave back. And boom. Hit me right in the gut, and the next day I signed up again. Give back a little bit, and I found out you can't do that. You can't give anything away because it comes back 100-fold. I've gotten more love and friendship and joy out of Toastmasters, and this is going to be written in my book of memories right here. I'm thrilled to be here with you. Had a program I will never forget. I was on a program with Tawny Elaine Godin. Anybody know that name? She was from New York State, Miss America. I spent the whole morning with Miss Teen America and Miss America. And Ruthie, my wife, she's always taking care of my creature needs. And sure enough, when I got home from the speech, she had the cold shower running for me. And the thrill, the joy of being with Tawny was this, that I saw Tawny when she was crowned. And maybe if you got teenage daughters, maybe you saw it too. And they put the crown on Tawny, and she was supposed to walk down the ramp. She started to walk, and she stopped, and she turned to Bert Parks. And Bert Parks was standing there looking young in his orthopedic underwear. And she said to him, she says, you know, Bert, I've made this walk every year since I was 5 years old. And he said, no, wait a minute, Tawny, you just got the crown. That's ridiculous. You know, you couldn't have. And she said, no, she said, every year since I was 5 years old, I watched this show. And she said, I never saw Miss America walk down the ramp. I always saw myself in that role. And when she said that, I had one of those ahas, you call them, one of those creative flashes where two things bang together in your mind. And right away I thought of Jonathan Livingston Seagull, one of my favorite books. If you haven't read it, go read it. If you're as dumb as I am, read it 10 times till the message hits through. But what happened is Jonathan had reached a certain level of perfection. Went up just where the high flyers, the fastest seagulls lived. And one day, Jonathan went up to the eldest gull, Chiang, and he said to Chiang, he said, I'd like to fly as fast as thought to anywhere that is. He wanted to be so fast he could think of anywhere in the universe and zap, he would be there that fast. And Chang said to Jonathan, he said, you must begin by knowing you have already arrived. Call that visualization. See it in your mind's eye. And I use this on the platform all the time. People say, aren't you scared and aren't you nervous? And yeah, I'm scared and I'm nervous and I have all the fears every one of you have. And I always get away by myself for 5 minutes before I come up here. And I sit down and I visualize an audience as a warm, loving, responsive group. And you have been. And you're beautiful. And I love you. This is my musical close. I always bring an orchestra along with me. I hope you guys are ready. Ladies and gentlemen, when I first discovered I have the opportunity to be here at Toastmasters, I was pretty darn excited because I believe that Toastmaster people, I think you're very special people. I've been bumping elbows with you for many, many years, and I've come to the conclusion that you're some of the luckiest people in the whole wide world. I'm sure you've been to enough meetings. Almost every motivator you ever hear stands up and says that there are three kinds of people: those who watch things happen, those who don't know anything is happening, and those who make things happen. You people make things happen. You take young people by the hand and you help them to understand that they can be more successful, more dynamic, and yes, much, much, much happier kinds of people. Just being with you these days and touching. I'm convinced that Toastmaster people, I think you're very loving people. Ladies and gentlemen, in my book, that makes you some of the luckiest, some of the loveliest people in the whole wide world. You've been a great audience. Thank you very much. God love you. Thank you. Hey, thank you very much. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, baby. Thank you. Oh, thank you.